George Papadopoulos, a former advisor to Donald Trump, is heading to jail. Papadopoulos pled guilty in October of last year to making a false statement to Robert Mueller's Russia probe. Natasha Fatah on us this morning. The first of perhaps more than a few. Walk us through what we know.
So Papadopoulos appeared in that D.C. courtroom yesterday where he told those who were present that he was sorry for what happened, that he considered himself a patriotic American, and that he made a mistake, essentially, by lying to investigators in the probe. So, yes, he's been sentenced to 14 days in prison. And as you say, John, he's the first to be sentenced in this ongoing investigation into whether, in fact, there was collusion between the Trump campaign and operatives within the Kremlin. Let's have a look at what Papadopoulos has to serve. As we've mentioned, 2 weeks in prison. He also has to serve 12 months of supervised release, then 200 hours of community service within about a year, and then he'll also be fined $9,500. This man is a Chicago native. He's 31 years old. He's a former petroleum analyst who decided to join the Donald Trump presidential campaign in March of 2016. And he offered up his services as a volunteer to have foreign policy advice for the then candidate. As it turns out, his name kept popping up when the investigation was moving forward to see whether, in fact, Washington operatives, non-Americans, were working with the Trump campaign in some capacity. And as it turns out, he was arrested last year, pleaded guilty in October of last year to the FBI that he had, in fact, lied about his meetings and the timing of those meetings with representatives who were working within the Kremlin. So they were discussing and negotiating the possibility of then-candidate Trump meeting with Vladimir Putin. What could come of that? Possibly getting dirt, as they described it, on Hillary Clinton through a series of emails, which were, of course, later released through WikiLeaks, and he lied about a lot of this. And then he said, yeah, I lied. I'm guilty, so let's move forward. And they will move forward. He is not, as we understand it, in jail right now. He's going to start serving that sentence at a later date. We're trying to figure out when exactly that will be. And in the meantime, the Mueller investigation, the larger investigation, still moves forward. Yeah, generally they get time to, pack their jammies and stuff before they go off to jail, even for 14 days. So Donald Trump, what is he saying about all of this? So initially he said, again, I don't know this guy. I don't know who Papadopoulos is. I have one picture with him, that famous picture of all of them together at a table negotiating something or other. But then he found out the sentence, and so he issued this tweet. Let's bring it up, where he says, 14 days for $28 million, $2 million a day, no collusion, a great day for America. Not sure what he's saying in terms of a great day for America, and many assume that when he's referencing that $28 million, that he believes that's the cost of the Mueller investigation, which he describes as a witch hunt. According to CNN and their numbers from the Department of Justice, they have spent about $17 million on the Russia meddling investigation, and specifically Mueller's investigation has spent about $7.7 million. So the numbers are off there. But Trump was asked yesterday by reporters on Air Force One if he was willing to be interviewed by Mueller, and he said this.
I'd do it under certain circumstances. I think it's a big waste of time because there was no collusion. Honestly, it's such a sad thing for our country to be going through a witch hunt like that. It's so hard for us to deal with other countries, including Russia, because of that witch hunt.
We've heard President Trump say many times that he feels this process is, as you heard him say there, a witch hunt, that it's unfair, it's not bipartisan enough, there isn't enough Republican representation as the investigation is moving forward. And then, again, I would love to speak to Mueller, even though my lawyers tell me not to, if this was a fair process. And he clearly feels that it continues to be an unfair process to his mind.
For more on what the sentence might mean for the Mueller investigation, we want to bring in Scott Lucas. Now, he's a professor of American politics at the University of Birmingham in UK. And that's where he joins us from now. Scott, thanks again for joining us. Let's talk about the Papadopoulos sentencing. What stands out for you?
Well, what stands out is the relative leniency of the sentence. Prosecutors had asked for 6 months in prison. And while the judge said that a prison sentence had to be imposed of some sort to deter others from lying to investigators, only 2 weeks is more of a token stay, you might call it. I think that's for one of two reasons. Either the judge accepted the arguments of Papadopoulos' defense team that while he had lied to investigators, there are others in the Trump campaign who are far more culpable, and therefore he shouldn't be scapegoated, and or the argument that George Papadopoulos is cooperating with the Mueller investigation over the Trump connections with Russia. One or both of those may be true in either case, it's not good news for Trump and his camp that it looks like Papadopoulos is getting more of a lenient sentence because the belief is here that there's evidence against others in the Trump camp.
So let's wildly speculate, Scott. Do you anticipate to see more names and charges coming forward?
Absolutely. I think, as you mentioned, we've already got 5 people connected with the Trump campaign, including Trump's lawyer Michael Cohen, campaign manager Paul Manafort, who are in the frame. We have got others who had meetings with the Russians. Doesn't necessarily mean they'll be charged, but when you talk about Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, when you talk about Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and when you talk about others in the campaign who endorsed, supported Papadopoulos' contacts, including campaign manager Corey Lewandowski, deputy campaign manager Sam Clovis, there's a wealth of possibilities. But here's the big question. Will Robert Mueller get Donald Trump? Because I think the Mueller team believes, quite rightly, they've got Trump at the least on obstruction of justice. What's more important, Trump's lawyers are worried that's true, and that's why they don't want Trump speaking to Mueller, which could possibly give Mueller even more ammunition for that obstruction of justice case, or, of course, perjury, if Trump slips up and lies to him.
For immediate reaction on what the president might think of the sentence, on Twitter, he came out and said this. Let's have a look at that. 14 days for 28 million, 2 million a day, no collusion, a great day for America. Help us unpack that reaction a little, if you could, Scott.
Well, how do you unpack Trump speak? That great day for America is him being sarcastic or trying to be sarcastic, which is, you spent all this money investigating me and there's nothing to see, and you've just got this T-boy, as the Trump team tried to call him, George Papadopoulos. That's all you've got. Well, what the reality is behind Trump speak is that he is extremely concerned about the investigation. He keeps trying to make it go away day on day by shouting no collusion. But the fact is that the Mueller team, far from wrapping this up, just collect more and more evidence. I think that they will be ready to move early next year against Trump. What they would really like is to get Trump into a room to discuss the evidence they have. Trump's lawyers are holding out against that. They're now even holding out against a written statement. That, I think, will be the final act, whether or not we get Trump, as it were, in the dock before Mueller, before we see everything unfold when Mueller's ready to swing at the king, as it were. And I think Donald Trump will be gone by next summer.
Okay, so that's a bold prediction, perhaps. Can any of this have to do with the midterms coming up? And could those midterm results have, as you suggest, an effect on how long the president sticks around?
Well, the midterms definitely have an effect. I mean, from a, quote, as it were, legal sense, or at least sort of, legal courtesy, it is practice that you don't file charges within 60 days of an election. So I don't think we can expect more George Papadopoulos's in court. From a political sense, however, if the Republicans do not do well in these elections, if they lose the House of Representatives, and especially if they lose the Senate, I don't think it means impeachment necessarily, or at least conviction on impeachment, because you need a 2/3 majority in Senate for that. But I think you'll start to see Republicans peel away from Donald Trump as a political liability. And if they peel away from him as a political liability, I think the pressure will be on him to resign before he is impeached, or even more importantly, here's what plays out. Mr. President, you can serve out your first term, but the day or week after you serve that term, you could be in court and facing prison. Do you want that? Or do you, like Richard Nixon in 1974, want to avoid the humiliation? Resign now.